of times. They were living in captivity. They weren't in the place that God wanted them to be. And we talked about this a few weeks ago. And so it wasn't easy for them. They were probably feeling quite barren. And I don't know about you, maybe right now feel like you're in a season of barrenness, of emptiness. I think we all can go through seasons like this in our lives. And so if you've not gone through a season like this, you might go through a season like this. I remember when I was like 18 years old, and I just felt so empty within. Like, I'd go to church and I'd try to worship, and I guess I would worship, because worship isn't about us. It's not about what we feel. It's about what we're doing for God. But I just felt nothing. And I would look around, and maybe that's you at times in your life. You look around and you think, oh my goodness, look at these people. They're so good. Like, and obviously God is speaking to them 24 hours a day. Like, they're walking around in the presence of God. They know that he never leaves them. Like, they can feel it all of the time. And I was like, that's not me. I just feel empty. I felt like I was not having anything within me. I felt like I wasn't giving anything. And I just felt empty. And I think it's interesting how Isaiah starts off this passage with these words, "Sing, barren woman." Like, today is Mother's Day, and he kind of picks this phrase, barren woman, because he knows the pain of barrenness. He knew the pain that Isaiah and the nation of Israel was going through, and actually he uses this picture of a barren woman to link it together. And he says, "Sing, barren woman." He knew that importance of motherhood, and he knew the pain that not giving birth could cause people. You know, and maybe that's sometimes how you feel. Maybe I think for a few people that's how you're feeling. I just feel barren. I feel empty. I feel like, what am I producing? What is there? Where's the fruit? And when we look at the statistics for the church nationally across the UK, it's not always happy reading. You know, statistics, they can paint a very bleak picture. They say that people are leaving the church in drones. They say if the current rate of decline of the church keeps on going, there will be no church left. They say the church has no relevance for young people or for older people as well. Now, I believe in something different. You know, I wouldn't be doing this if I agreed with what the world says. Like, I believe, and I think you know, that actually there is a very different picture. We know different. I know that if the church disappeared, people would notice. Thousands of food banks would close down. Toddler groups would shut. Youth groups, support networks would all be gone. In this community, you know, I believe that the church makes a difference. And I believe that the church should go on making a difference. And I hope and I pray that if this church, this building, this place here closed down, that our community would soon notice. And I want to believe, and I want to hope, and I want to pray that actually as the church scattered throughout the week, as we leave this place, as we go into our workplaces, as we go into our communities, as we go to Tesco's or Aldi or wherever you do your shopping, as you meet with your friends, I want to believe that actually if you didn't just stop going there, but you stopped being the church in those places, that those communities would notice. That something would be different, because we don't just do church on a Sunday, we do church throughout the week. We are the church. But we've got to take note. We've got to be relevant to our communities. We've got to keep on producing fruit. If we're going to enlarge the place of our tent, if we're going to stretch out our tent curtains wide, if we're going to grow, if we're going to take God to more people, if we're going to help people come to know the God that we know, we've got to be relevant. We're listening to an audio CD at the moment. Who even remembers CDs? Like most of you, the kids have gone out. The young people on the front row, they're not sure what CDs are. We know what CDs are. We've seen them in a museum. And some of you guys are like, oh my goodness, I still thought CDs were new technology. Anyway, in our car, the radio doesn't work. So we're having to, and there's no one of those aux plugs or anything like that. So we're listening to a book on CD, and it's actually quite interesting. The kids are fighting over it, and then Sian keeps on skipping back for when I drive the car, and she's not in it because she wants to listen to it. Anyway, yesterday we went to Costco, and that's like a 5-hour journey because it was queuing off the parkway. Don't go to Costco on a Saturday or on a Sunday. Just go during the week. It's much quieter. Anyway, we're listening to this CD. Not Julia Donaldson. Jacqueline Wilson. And some of you might remember that we're listening to 4 Children and It. I don't know if any of your children have read that. You've read that. Or some of you might remember there was a book, 5 Children and It. And the BBC did a little show. Anyway, that's no importance at all. But during this CD, this audio book that we're listening to, it says the children are off somewhere, and it says in the book, it's like, and the lady got out her BlackBerry and had a look. And so we listened to this, and Sian turned round and asked Caris, do you know what a BlackBerry is? Well, it's a piece of fruit. See, how quickly does technology move on? And some of you right now might not know what a BlackBerry is. I had a BlackBerry. I had BBN. Can anyone remember that? No. Well, BlackBerry, listen, in case you didn't know, in case you're too young or too old, it was a phone, okay? But society quickly moves on, and actually the church, we need to make sure that we are relevant to our community. We need to not change what we believe, but we need to make sure that actually we're not a barren church, that we're giving something to our community that they need. And that's always going to be Jesus. But it might be an iPhone now, not a BlackBerry. And we've got to be aware, we're not actually giving iPhones away, just in case anyone came in. But hey, maybe you as an individual might feel barren. What is the fruit? Well, hey, I want to just point out 3 things that this passage says, and then we're going to discuss them. We're going to have more time for discussion today. It says this. It says, do not be afraid. You will not be put to shame. See, Isaiah speaks to our fear. And maybe as we approach this new season as churches, maybe, hey, you want to step into a new season as an individual. You want to say, yeah, I want to be someone that produces more fruit. I want to be someone that's really on fire for Jesus. And maybe you feel nudged and God calling you into something new or into something different. Maybe, you're feeling nudged as you're out in your community, and God's nudging you, but there's this fear there. And it's holding you back. And do not be afraid. You will not be put to shame. Do not fear disgrace. You will not be humiliated. See, fear will often hold us back. See, constantly throughout the Bible, we're told to not be afraid. We're told to have courage. And I think the enemy knows that fear will stop us stepping into the place that God wants us to step into. Many years ago, I remember when I was at Bible college, there was a lady, and she wasn't very well. Her name was Dee. And we were about to head off on mission trips, going throughout the world. And before we went off, this lady, she wasn't very well, Dee. And I went up to her, and I really felt that God wanted me to come and pray for her, to pray for her healing. And so I said, Dee, can I come and pray for you? And I felt so passionate, and I got all proper Pentecostal on her. And I was praying for her. I spoke in tongues over her, which is kind of a language that God can kind of give us. And I was really feeling so confident that God was healing her. I went away on mission trip, and word came around that Dee had died. And I was like, God, why didn't you answer my prayer? God, I felt sure. I was so full of faith. I knew that I really knew that you were going to heal her. And I was like, God, why? why? And I thought, well, maybe God doesn't want me to pray for people's healing. And you know what? For the next kind of year of my life, I ran away from it. I thought, I'm not going to pray for someone who needs healing anymore. I'm not going to pray for the sick anymore because I don't think God's going to use me for that. And I let fear hold me back. I let fear stop me doing what God was asking me to do. See, the enemy will plant fear within us. The enemy will plant those what ifs within us. As we've talked and as we've discussed and as we've prayed about this, and Andrew and Leslie as well over in Woodhouse, you know what? There's been a million what ifs that we can go. What if? What if it fails? What if people don't like us? What if everyone leaves? And maybe you've got those what ifs personally. We've got baptisms coming up on Easter Sunday, and if you've not been baptized, I would love to ask you to get baptized. And when I've asked people in the past, I said, hey, why don't you come and get baptized? It's the next step of your faith. It doesn't have to be this massive thing. It's just this natural thing. They said, but what if I'm not ready? What if I go out and I make mistakes? What if I still swear? What if I still get angry? What if I still do wrong? If we wait for the what ifs to all be gone, you know what? We're never going to do anything. But that fear of the what ifs will definitely stop us moving forward. Maybe God's prompting us to give our time. Well, what if I run out of time? What if I don't have enough time? Maybe God's prompting us to give financially. Well, what if there's not enough for me? Hey, well, I'm really glad that God doesn't have what ifs. I'm really glad that when Jesus came to earth, he didn't listen to the what ifs. What if the people don't listen to me? What if the people don't like me? What if the people attack me? What if my friends abandon me? What if they hang me to a cross and kill me? Well, actually, sometimes through the what ifs, God will do a creative work and something amazing in your life. But we've got to listen to the words that God speaks above the what ifs. Don't be afraid, for you will not be put to shame. The verse goes on. He speaks to our fears and it speaks to our past as well. It says, you will forget the shame of your youth and remember no more the reproach of your widowhood. You see, I think that fear holds us back. And I think our past can hold us back as well. The past can hold us back. I remember this was before my story of Dee. I was praying for another lady, and her name was Edna. And Edna had cancer. And I was praying for Edna, my hand on her shoulder. And as I'm praying for Edna, she looks up. She goes, well, it didn't work for my friend, did it? See, our past and things that happened in our past can hold us back as well. I love the story in Matthew 14 where Peter walks on water. And there's so much within that, you know, and some of you will know the story, but basically Jesus is out walking on water like Jesus does, and the disciples see him. And Peter, who's kind of often speaks without thinking through what he's actually saying, put your hand up if that's you, kind of he sees Jesus out there and he's like, oh, if that's you. Well, first of all, they think it's a ghost, but he's like, oh, if that's you, why don't you call out to me and I'll come to you? And so Jesus like, yeah, come on, come out. And Peter steps out of the boat and he starts walking towards Jesus on water. It's pretty amazing. And then suddenly Peter looks around and he sees the circumstances and he sees the waves and he sees the storm and he starts to sink. Jesus, the way that Jesus does, takes out his hand, he pulls him back up. Pulls them out. And then it says this. Well, Jesus kind of talks to them a little bit as they're out there. And then it says in verse 32 of Matthew 14, and when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. And before that, in verse 31, so Jesus reaches out his hands, he's caught him, and then he says this to him, you have little faith, he said, why did you doubt? And you know what that's actually saying there? You know, as well as kind of what it's physically saying, Peter is once again stood on the water. As Jesus talks to him, he's not just hauling his full weight, and as they go back to the boat to climb back into it, Peter is once again walking on the water. See, if that was me, I would be like swimming back to the boat. Or probably just drowning in the water. I'd be like, God, I failed. Can't you see that I sunk? You had to rescue me. And actually, I would be looking at my past and saying, hey, I failed. But Peter, in that moment, he sees Jesus. He sees Jesus' hand. He gets rescued by Jesus. And he walks back to the boat. He climbs into the boat, but he walks on water again. See, our past failures, our past hurts, they can stop us moving on. But also, they can help us be the people that God wants us to be. See, and I believe God wants to speak to our past. Maybe as a church we've failed, we've messed up. Maybe as churches we've got things wrong. Maybe we've tried stuff before and it's gone wrong. And we don't ever want to do that again. Maybe as individuals you've tried things and it's failed. You tried to tell your friend about Jesus, but they laughed at your face. You tried to do good, but you got kicked and mocked for it. Yeah, Jesus, number one, he wants us to move past that. But maybe he also wants to build on that. You know, the biggest cause of mental health in children, of bad mental health in children, is the removal of obstacles from their lives. When parents remove every obstacle out of their children's way, it actually creates bad mental health for young people because they've never had to get over anything. They've never had to climb over any mountains. They've never had to get over any obstacles. And maybe those obstacles that we've stumbled over, maybe those obstacles that we've fallen up, hey, maybe that's Jesus. He's building some resilience in us. Maybe that season of barrenness that you felt, actually, Jesus is using that to prepare you for what he's got for you in the future. You know, we hate tests, don't we? We hate tests, but we all love things that have been tested. We all love to get in a car with someone that's passed their driving test, but we never wanted to sit that ourselves. We all like medication that's been tested, but we don't like tests. But maybe some of these things in your past, hey, God is going to use for your future. And then the last thing he speaks to is your identity. And it says this, for your maker is your husband. The Lord Almighty is his name. The Holy One of Israel is your Redeemer. He is called the God of all the earth. Yeah, he speaks to the fear. He speaks to the past. And then he speaks to Israel and he says, hey, I am with you. Your maker, the one who made you, is your husband. And maybe today on Mother's Day, and in today's society, the world is a little bit different, but in that culture, a woman was very much defined by who her husband was. It made all the difference in their lives, and who we're walking with, I believe, still makes a difference in our lives. Who your husband and wife is makes a difference to you. But who we walk with will make a difference in our lives. A few years ago, I was down in London at a conference, and I was talking to this guy, and I didn't really know who he was, but chatting away like you do, and there's me making a fool of myself, and his name was Bob, and I was like, hi, Bob, nice to meet you. And then a little while later, the friend who I'd gone down with said, I saw you talking to my father-in-law earlier, and his father-in-law, I knew who his father-in-law was, but I didn't recognize him at the time. He was a billionaire, private jets, all of that kind of stuff. And then he said, after this, shall we go out for coffee with him? And I said, yeah, that's fine. Anyway, so I was dressed in my scratty clothes, my dirty trainers, ripped jeans, I don't know what, nothing nice. And I'm walking out with my friend and out with his father-in-law. And we go to the hotel of the father-in-law, and the doorman opens the door for us, and I look at myself and I'm like, they're not going to let me in. But they let me in. And I walked in and they took me to this seat and they pulled out my chair and I sat down and they said, would you like tea or coffee, sir? Or whatever they did. It wasn't me that they let in. It was the person who I was walking with that they let in. And if we're going to get over fear, if we're going to go over our past, if we're going to enlarge the place of our tent, the best thing for us to do is to see our true identity. It's to get closer to the person that we're walking with, to know that our Maker is our husband and the Lord Almighty is his name. It's his name. And today, God wants you to know, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. And I'm walking with you today. So we're going to break into some groups. We're going to break into some discussions really quickly. There's a couple of questions coming up on the screen. If you're new to church, what we like to do after some weeks, we just move our chairs a little bit and we talk about the preach. It gives you an opportunity to say, I disagreed with that, I didn't like that point, or to say, I didn't really understand that bit, and to apply it to our lives. So here's a couple of questions that you might want to use. We're going to say goodbye to everyone online. It's been great being with you this morning. And for the next few minutes, we're just going to discuss a couple of these questions in small groups. Let's go.
Thank you so much for watching the preach. It has been an amazing morning and we would love to see you in the week at any of our events. So stay up to date on our social media, on our website. Keep checking because we update things all the time. We have so much going on and we'd love to see you there. Have a great week.